been doing these episodes for quite a while now, and it feels like oftentimes we're speaking into the future.
Okay.
Because obviously we sort of record the episodes and then we have to go through the whole process of getting it out and things. And it's like the things we're saying, it's sort of speaking into the future. Well, that's how I feel personally about it anyway. Do you obviously feel the same way, or do you think it's something?
I think we're kind of relating to the future and to the present as well. For
Yeah.
me, it's a combination of both.
Well, now at that point, it's now sort of the things, sometimes you speak about things and then
Yeah.
they're relevant at that point in time, but oftentimes they're not in like a week or a month because of the way the world moves. That's just why I've said, I feel like it's a lot about speaking into the future. If someone were to come to Earth and let's say civilization has ended, they're just gonna pick up lots of tapes of people just having recordings of people's voices, and is sort of that future.
Well, do you think that's the life of podcasts at the moment? Do you think that's what we're doing? Do you think that if we were taken over by extraterrestrials tomorrow, they'd be like, "What is all this?" Because there is so many podcasts these days. You think that's
But that's
recording
yeah,
what's happening in
because
it's like a record for people coming
yeah,
into the future.
because like
to see what Earth is about.
when we go and look back at ancient civilizations, what were the things they did? Painting on rocks. But we have obviously found a different medium, which is voice recording.
Yeah.
And the way I see as well, life and things are cyclical, and there's always a cycle. Because I remember when we were younger, we listened to the radio, and now it's like podcasts, which is a form of radio. And it's sort of this, it's this cycle just going on and on and on and on and just repeating itself. And if extraterrestrials were to come to Earth today, they would just be like, wow, this is what these people recorded. They may find some interesting things, they may find other things, and they think, wow, these people were up to no good. Just like when we discover painting in caves, ancient caves that's been there many years over. Some of it is like, huh? But a lot of it is the recording of culture, isn't it? It's the recording of time. And I think that's what it is. It's just more, we're recording time at this point. And in the future, in about 1,000 years, TV might not exist. In 100 years, TV might not exist, and it might be a different form of media.
Yeah.
Or if civilization were to end and someone were to come, they might not have the means to be able to access the televisions and the technology needed for those things. So it will just be super, super different. So yeah.
I think it's a good way to record what's happening now, here and now. And it's going to be a good record for generations and generations to come. Because a lot of those hieroglyphics, I can never say the word.
Hieroglyphics. I think I'm pronouncing it wrong as well.
I don't know, but they sometimes were hard to interpret.
Yeah.
As long as the English language or whatever language continues, I think it's gonna be easy for people to sit down and listen to what's going on.
I think that I read about it the other day that they couldn't decipher the hieroglyphics for a while until they found like the Rosetta Stone, which was sort of the manuscript for the language. And I think something else I discovered the other day as well is that English is like spoken by I think about 10-15% of people in the world.
I know.
And it's something that's mind-blowing because you go everywhere and you speak English. But then when you actually sort of think about it, there's in a country like India, there's a population of 1 billion plus.
God, they've got so many.
And English wouldn't be a lot of people's first language.
And we'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsor, African Chica.
We're here again, in another episode of Changing the Narrative. I'm here, Godwin, once again.
Yeah. And
I'm joined by Jaye. Obviously, who's an entrepreneur. We can't sing about it too much about the things you do, in not just in the work you do, but also the external stuff as well in terms of, bringing people together, creating networks that's needed as well. So yeah. Welcome again. Welcome everyone to another episode. And, this week's discussion, this episode's discussion really is interesting because it's curated. And what is it, Jaye?
We're talking about confidence. So what does confidence mean to you?
To be fair, confidence is just, for me, I don't think it's something that oftentimes we look at certain words and we know what it means, but we don't know what it means. I don't know. There's a word for it. Where it's like a.
So, what? No, I'm
it's like
asking,
hold on. Let me before I go to it.
Yeah.
It's like a universally accepted meaning, But like, when you see your friend and something means something, you nod to them, they're like, yeah. But if they were to ask you and put you on the spot, what does it actually mean? It'll be one of those videos where they come up with the mics and the vox pops where they ask people
Yeah, but
name 3 countries
yeah.
beginning with A or something, and I think that's it really. In terms of confidence, what it means to myself is just being able to accentuate yourself in a space that you contain, being able to showcase of yourself and your position of strength, even if you're not in that position of strength. And that's what confidence means to me. Because it changes, because often in certain spaces you may not feel as confident.
Yeah.
In other spaces you may feel confident because you're in your element. And so it's not something that is just stagnated and is in one spot.
Okay.
It's something that flows and ebbs and flows, and it's how do you tap into that at all times?
Okay. For me, it's kind of an element of that, but it's kind of different at the same time. So for me, confidence is an innate self-belief in
Yeah.
your strength. That's what
That's
that
what it
means
means to me, but
yeah. Do you like my definition?
that's what it meant to me too.
That's what it means to me. So, for me, confidence is you have to believe in yourself,
Yeah.
and then expel that to whoever's surrounding you. So that's what confidence means to me. I think confidence is something that can be learnt. I don't think necessarily everybody has confidence off the bat. For me personally, I've had situations where I've worked with people and they haven't been confident, and then with coaching and stuff like that, I've managed to take them out of their inner self and bring out their personality. So I think it's something that you can learn,
Yeah.
but you have to have that self confidence. It's about
Yeah.
it's about being
Because I think for myself, because I play football,
Yeah.
and if someone were to see me on the football pitch, they'll be like, why is he so confident? Because I'm always like, giving smack to everyone else,
Yeah.
doing a madness, as I call it. And then, just portraying that. But if someone were to see me in another space, they'll be like, it's not as confident. And that's why I think it's something that ebbs for myself personally anyway, because, certain people as well, if they in the space they're comfortable with,
yeah.
they would be confident. Like when you're around your friends, there's
Yeah,
certain
you're
people that
top
you,
of confidence, aren't you? You're like,
you're at work.
yeah,
You see them at work, and they're just like always
Yeah.
at their desk, head down. But then you go out, to the work dues later
Yeah.
on, and then they're just like, who are you?
Yeah.
And I think that's confidence, isn't it? But it's just, as you said, it can be coached, and it's about giving people the tools to draw from those spaces that they're confident in and bring them into the spaces where that confidence is needed.
Yeah. So I like that point you made though, because it is very much you can be confident in one scenario, then in the next scenario
Yeah.
you're like the shyest, most introvert individual ever. And
Yeah.
then people will look at you and go, is that the same person
Yeah,
I
it's not
saw
the
5
same.
minutes
It's not
ago?
the same. Yeah.
I'm really confused. But there's some people who generally have an innate confidence across the spectrum. So they could be in a auditorium speaking to 10,000 people,
Yeah.
and then be somewhere else and still have the confidence. How do you think that person develops that? Because I don't understand, because I know I can be really confident in certain scenarios. You put me in another scenario and I'm like, is that Jay? Because she's so
I think
quiet.
there's two things. One of it is charisma, which is natural. And some people just have charisma, and regardless, if you have charisma, oftentimes people gravitate towards you.
Okay.
And through that gravitation, you don't need to be as confident because they're doing half the work for you.
Right.
Your
okay.
charisma, your charm does half the work
Yeah.
for you. So even if you're not as confident, it shows that you are, and it's portrayed that you are. So when people see you, they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, she's so confident. I can't." Because, and this is what I say, like when you speak to those people, oftentimes, away from everyone else,
Yeah.
they would say, "Oh yeah, sometimes we do have times where we doubt ourselves, or times where we don't feel as confident," because that's just a natural state of being. And I think even to get your confidence up, oftentimes you have to a lot of confidence is based on knowledge.
Okay.
And information, and the more information you have, the more confident you feel. The more confident you
Some
feel.
people can wing it though. Some people can be in a scenario.
Yeah, but that is the
where they know nothing about it, but they can go into that scenario even not knowing anything and still elude confidence in a
Exude
subject matter they don't know anything about.
Yeah, but
So,
that's part of knowledge, because when you have conversations with people, people tend to often think it's the substance of the conversation that is important. But oftentimes it's not the substance, it's how you showcase yourself and how you portray. And is what is it they say? If you say something really confidently, people will believe it even if it's a lie.
true.
If you're like, yeah, when you're with your
the sky is black. Yeah, today the sky is black.
When you're with your friends and you're lying on the skin of your teeth, but you've obviously got to tell them like, and then they'll believe it, and then they go tell someone else the story, and they'll be like, oh, Jay said, Godwin said, and you're just thinking like, yeah, I can't back this.
Yeah.
But it's that, isn't it? But it's how, because oftentimes we have conversation with people and people will be like, oh my God, it's how you know, but it's literally how you showcase the information. You could say water is wet, but you could also say water is wet. And depending on how you say it, people will believe you, because it's if you're saying it confidently, people think, oh, this person believes what they're saying. And even when you look at, things like politicians, for example, and they come on the television and they have to give statements, people, oftentimes you look at their body language. And if their body language isn't confident, people can, from the jump, know they're lying. And that's why we do things like media training, for example, where you train people to exude that confidence, even if they don't believe in the thing that they have to go read out or say. They are obviously trained to say it and wing it in that sense, and that's it's also learned.
I've got a question for you.
Go on.
So if you were to look at across the world, the globe, who would you put as the epitaph of confidence as an individual?
It's gonna sound controversial. I think there are
Go
two.
on. We like controversy.
There are two people, and one of them, I'll start with the non-controversial person.
Go on.
So one of them is Joe Rogan, because he does so much in so many spaces that people don't even realize what he does. People think he just does podcasts, but he does like the WWE, what's it called, announcements, and the ringside talks
UFC
and commentary and the UFC and things like that. And he's just someone that just shows cases that confidence at all times. And if you were to be like, oh, this is a confident person, he'll be one of those people. And that's why I said, even when people have conversations with him, they have conversation with him because they feel like he's confident about whatever they're talking about, and he's confident in himself.
What I like about Joe Rogan as well, though, so for example, when you look watching his podcast, if he doesn't know something, he will confidently say he doesn't know something, and so therefore, though he might not know the topic, the confidence that he says that he doesn't know the topic, you think, okay, cool, doesn't matter.
But that's also, the psychology as well of conversations, and the psychology of exuding confidence.
Yeah.
By him saying he doesn't know it, what he does is he empowers the other person to speak.
Yeah.
By you saying, oh, I don't know this, he empowers the other person. Because oftentimes what people do is try to dim other people when they're having conversations. And once you dim them, people shy away if they don't feel as confident in whatever they're talking about. But by you taking sort of the non-defensive stance and saying, you know what, I know nothing about this.
Yeah.
They would obviously, align with that energy and be like, maybe I can educate you, because people have that innate desire to want to share more. So it's sort of a tactic, and it's a good thing he does, and I think it's something that a lot of people need to learn as well, because even sometimes when we're in meetings and stuff, you have people that will say, I'm playing devil's advocate, and you just know, you're not playing devil's advocate.
I love that. I love that saying though. I'm playing devil's advocate.
You're not playing devil's advocate. You're just trying to put holes in my story and find it. But I'm so confident that I know I'm coming out of this unscathed.
But you know that terminology reminds me of the terminology. I don't want to seem bad.
Yeah.
And then you go and say something really bad.
I know full well you believe what you're saying, and you just don't want to look like the bad guy that's saying it.
Yeah.
And so they'll ask you questions like, oh, what do you think about this? And then one question leads to 10 questions, but you're not playing devil's advocate. You're literally trying to find holes in the story.
So back to Joe.
But Joe, and then I think the second person is actually the second person I'll say is Donald Trump, because I just think
controversial.
No, but
but he's confident. No,
he is confident. Like if you ask people one thing about him, they will say he's a very confident man. Like he's super confident, and even when he says certain things that are outlandish, he says it with so much confidence that is so believable. And at one point, that's why, the old Twitter, they had to ban his account because everything he said was so, he was saying it so confidently that people were like, people will run with this. People
Yeah.
will literally run with this guy, whatever he
Yeah.
says. And that is something that, and things like that, I don't even think that sort of level of confidence is trained. It's more something that you,
So that's that whole thing I said about being innate.
yeah,
It's innate.
it's an innate thing that you tap into, and obviously you can get to that level, but it's different because when you come into conversations and when you come into contact with other people who are that confident as well, some people will show up themselves if that's not you yourself naturally. Because things like, when you do training, you do things like teaching people how to do a confident handshake, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
And these are people that have been doing handshakes for many years. It doesn't matter what training of handshakes you do, like, if you're not doing the proper handshake, you would feel away like, that was a strong handshake. And it's those sort of things that all align. And it's not, that's the thing, it's not just one thing, it's a series of things that people do and people you can use as tools to essentially make yourself more confident.
My two. So you've come with a controversial one. I have to come with a controversial one as well.
Go on.
So my two, I would say non-controversial.
Yeah.
Michelle Obama.
Okay.
And she alludes so much confidence in speaking. She knows also when to be confident and when to step back. So
Yeah.
if you look at her when she was obviously the wife, when Barack was, she'd speak when she needed to. She'd be
Yeah.
out there, she'd be confident, relaying the messages, etc., etc., etc. But when it was time for Barack to shine, she'd step back and she'd still be confident,
Yeah.
but allow him to say what he needed to say, etc.
I think
So,
that's an interesting point you just raised, because of when you read a lot about some of the self-help books and things, they do say things like don't outshine the master and this sort of
the
things.
master.
Guys, not to say she's a master, but it's sort of a
Yeah.
similar thing where
Yeah.
oftentimes people will go into spaces and want to sort of usurp the person that is in the leadership position when
Yeah.
A, you do not have enough information, and B, you do not have enough
Yeah.
of an alliance to do it. And it's about playing your role. Like oftentimes we need to play roles, and even being confident is knowing when to play your
Oh,
role
gosh,
and
yeah.
when not to.
Yeah.
And that's a very good point that you've raised. That's like she knows when to play her role.
Yeah.
She knows when to be the confident wife, the outgoing, outspoken lady or whatever. And she also knows when to be the supportive wife as well, and
Yeah.
the first lady. And I think that comes with confidence as well. Not just
knowing
just
yourself. Yeah.
yeah, but also because it's easy for people to get into your head and be like, oh, you should do more. Oh, you're the first lady, you should do more. Oh, you're Obama's wife, you should do more. You should have more of a say.
Yeah.
But how do you then navigate that? Because you fall into the trap where all you're trying to do is prove to people when you know deep down that that's not necessarily you. And I think that's the trap that a lot of people fall into, where they try to
Be overconfident. Because
yeah,
there is such a thing. There is such a
they
thing
try
as
to
being
be overconfident. But as I said, like when people suss it out really quickly, people just be like, yeah, they play in the part or they play in the role. But when you're just that confident, it's also allowing people the space to bring out their energies as well.
You want to know my controversial one?
Go on, what's your controversy?
Kanye? No,
Kanye.
Now, I don't know who. Can I use the word worse? I don't know who's worse, Trump or Kanye. Obviously, they've both had their moments. They've both said things that are really, really controversial. But he's a very confident person. Very, very confident. I would actually even say. I would say he's even a little bit overconfident.
Would you say?
But I think he does it for attention.
There you go. That's what I was gonna ask. Would you say it's confidence or is attention seeking? Because
I think it's a combination of both.
There's a fine line between being confident and seeking attention, saying things that are really, really outlandish just for saying it. And I think that's what, if you ask a lot of people now about Kanye, that's what a lot of people would say, that they wouldn't necessarily align him with confidence. They'll be like, oh,
you think so?
He just says wild things.
But you have to be confident to say those wild things, don't you think?
Not really.
Yeah,
I think I would disagree with that.
Why?
Some people would just say things because they're stupid. I'm sorry. They just say things because they're stupid and there is no filter. Like, you don't need confidence to say outlandish things. We've been in the world the age of social media, and we've seen lots and lots of outlandish takes from people that they didn't need confidence. You could tell they didn't need confidence. They just lacked the discernment to be able to like be like, perhaps I shouldn't say that. So I don't necessarily think it's confidence. But I think we're gonna swiftly move on as well because it's easy to talk about confidence and being confident and or those kind of things. But what about confidence knockers? Because you know,
Confidence knockers.
yeah, confidence knockers. Because it's like
What's a confidence knocker?
it's like sometimes you feel confident in a space and then things comes and knock you off. It's like if you're running a sprint or you pull a hamstring, it knocks your confidence back. And you could be dominant in things. I know I have a lot of sports. I allude to a lot of sports because I'm a sporty person.
You're a sporty person.
I'm a sporty person, so that's all I know. But it's certain things like that would hit your confidence. It knocks your confidence back, and you feel away, because you don't feel as confident as you used to, as you once was, because you can't feel that confident all the time, can you? Because those things have hit you. So, have you had any of those like along the way in your?
Ooh, confidence knockers. I still feel that's a really interesting term. Gosh, yeah, being in a space where I haven't prepared myself. So, like for example, when at work when you need to do presentations and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and you've been thrown in to do a presentation and
Yeah.
you don't know your stuff and you're thrown. You're like,
did you get the devil's advocate that ripped apart your presentation?
No, thank God. I'm very good at winging it. So at the end of the day, I went in there nervous as hell.
Yeah.
But managed to compose myself after a while and get back into it. And that comes again with, like you said, you can train and you can coach people. And for me, what I learned was when you have a presentation, you don't necessarily need to read it verbatim. And then I was like, okay, so I've got things here, but I don't really know my background to what I'm saying. So forget the slides, pull up the bits that you know from the slides, and get on with it. And that's how I dealt with the confidence knocker. That's what I'd say.
I think it's like where's the rules of presentation? Less words on the slide, more pictures.
There you go, and then you talk around
just
the rest.
Engage, and engage the people that you're speaking to, and engage with them, and make sure that they're actually enjoying the conversation. Because oftentimes I think we see presentations as like, I need to present this thing. It needs to be amazing.
They're scary though.
Presentations are scary. But I think
everybody says they're scary.
It's the first step, because I remember when I was at uni and we had to give like, I think the first 2 weeks of uni. I think everyone's done this. Everyone could relate to this. They make you do a group presentation in like not the first 2 weeks, in the first month of uni. They put you into groups and then they make you do a group presentation, and you're just thinking, oh my God, I've got 2 minutes to speak. I don't know these guys. I don't know who they are. I don't know if they're gonna put rubbish before me. I don't know how they're gonna go. And it's just difficult. You sometimes watch things like The Apprentice and they have to give presentations as well. You're feeling like that must be daunting, because you're hoping that people accept what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's not bullshit, and it's actually the real stuff. But I think in terms of confidence knockers for myself, I think oftentimes as you go through life, you have things that just knock your confidence naturally. And things like, not getting the job you wanted.
Oh gosh, yeah.
not landing the role you wanted, going for a deal and then not getting it. And then those things start to make you like doubt yourself.
Yeah.
And doubt your ability. Oftentimes you apply for jobs, and I've applied for many jobs. But I think a lot of people, I was reading there's some guy that applied for about 900 jobs before he got one. And it's like, he's confident. His
confidence must be on the floor.
Yeah, but he's confident to keep going, because some people have given up at job 10. Some people have given up at job, but it's just those things that happens, and they're the natural state of things that happen in the world, and it's the world we live in. And I was speaking to a lady at my old workplace who's quite elderly, and she said to me like, I remember back in the day when you get fired from one job, you just walk next door and you get a job.
Yeah.
But it's no longer like that. Now you gotta do CVs, gotta do interviews, Skype, and all of these Skype interviews, all of these things that you need to do now just to land a job. Some people have, and some organizations have like 5-stage interviews, 7-stage interviews.
I've done 8 before.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, A-stage interviews. That's
But
ridiculous.
that's investment banking, so yeah.
I still think it's too much. I think there was a post I saw where they said if you had to do 8 stage interviews, then I think the problem is you and not the people you're interviewing, because you just
You trying to sell me something there?
huh?
You trying to sell me something there?
No, I'm just saying if you have to do 8 stages of interview, then the problem is not the people you interview, because earlier on you should be able to suss out. And there, and one thing I've noticed as well, obviously sticking to the topic about applying for jobs and things like that, is that there are people who are good at interviews, and this is something that I have to look out for, being in a position now where we get to hire people,
Yeah.
because it's like there are people who are really good at interviews but are not good at the job,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then there are people who are really good at the job and not good at interviews.
Yeah.
And it's how do you find the balance and how do you get that out through the interview process?
Mm.
Because, and this is just our way of my way anyway of sort of giving back to people and just trying to spot those sort of people who may be shy, but
Yeah.
you could see the drive in them, you could see the enthusiasm, you could see the fire in their eyes. You could see that this is what they want to do and that's
Yeah.
stuff they believe in, whereas there's just other people who are just like come to the interview, knock it out the park. And that being said, like, I've had interviews where I walked out of there thinking I got this.
And did you actually get
No.
it? There you go.
When I got the phone call, I was like, yep, they're calling me back. And they're just like, yeah, he didn't get the job. And I was like,
So
yeah.
on that note, then, do you think you have to have two different types of confidence in a work scenario and outside of a work scenario?
What do you mean?
Okay, confidence in a work scenario, you've got a certain confidence that you need to have with your colleagues and blah blah
Yeah.
blah. But then outside of work, does that confidence still apply? Do you have to apply it differently?
I think it's interchangeable because sometimes
And do you need to be confident in the work environment?
yeah, I think you don't necessarily need to, but you need to show you know your stuff. And I think this was an advice that I got really early in my career, where someone said to me like, you're the expert on whatever it is you're doing. You're the expert, so act like the expert, speak like the expert.
Yeah.
And this is something that a lot of people need to take from this, which is like, if you're in a role, people
Yeah.
have hired you because they think
You're
A,
the-
you're good at it, or B, you have the potential to be good at it.
Yeah.
So it's about you going and doing the background work. Like, trust me, the University of Google, University of YouTube has helped me in so many jobs.
Yeah.
Like, I walked in there, didn't know anything, went on Google,
And learn it.
went
in
on
the night.
YouTube, learn
Yeah.
it overnight, because that's what needs to be done. But I think oftentimes people don't want to do that extra work because now you've landed the job and
Yeah.
then it's like you're struggling in the role, but you don't know how it is. And I get it as well, you also don't want to ask your colleagues, so you don't seem like the guy that doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
But I always say, like, even in roles I've been in, just ask all the questions really early, because when you ask the questions, people give you the leeway because you're new.
Yeah.
And I think that's one pitfall people fall into, where they don't ask the questions early, and then you're like a month in, 2 months in, and you're asking the questions you should have asked on week 1.
Oh gosh,
And people
in corporate, I used to take a notepad and I used to literally ask every single and write everything down.
Yeah.
Because how are you going to learn otherwise?
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
the best time people would trust me. That's the best time
Yeah.
people would like actually give you an answer.
Yeah.
Because other times people, they just look at you like,
Yeah.
I'm too busy. But when you're new, everyone's like, oh my
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
that's a new guy. Oh my God, that's a new lady. Let's say hello. And
Yeah.
people are more welcoming. And they'll be like, my door's always open. The door's only open for about a month, guys. Like, don't think it's always. It's only open for a short space of time. And so it's about just getting into that rhythm and just asking those questions really early, so you build confidence that way.
Yeah.
Because you have people who would literally help you. I've been in jobs where like people would literally sit me down and be like, oh, have you got an hour? I've got an hour of my time, and they'll literally sit me down and go through things with me. It may not be your manager, it could be other people in the role, but they'll sit down and be like, this is how it's done. And it's that willingness, you showing that willingness is what makes people more want to help you. In that way. In terms of your question about if you need confidence for 2 spaces, I think it's interchangeable. Some people are confident as a result of the work they do, and so that reflects on their personal life.
Okay.
And so people are also confident because of their personal life. and
Okay.
that reflects back into the work. And that's why there's always a balance between work home. We have this whole work home
Yeah.
balance, because oftentimes if things happen in your personal life, it does spill over to your workplace
Yeah.
inadvertently, and vice versa. And it's difficult to sort of switch off, and just be like, boom, I'm home now, and I'm gonna deal with tomorrow's problem tomorrow,
Yeah.
because at the back of your mind is just running, it's running
Yeah.
marathons.
Yeah.
I should have sent that email, I should have done this, and it's just running marathons in your mind.
Yeah.
I think it's interchangeable.
Mm.
What about yourself? What you think is?
I think you have different level. It depends for me. I think it's personally down to the job you do.
Yeah.
Because if you are, I don't know, a technical guy sitting there doing coding, do you
Yeah.
need confidence to write code? No. But you probably need
Hmm.
confidence
A
to
lot of
sit
tech
there.
people will be looking
Yeah,
at this and be like,
well, I would
if you're
say
not
that.
confident in your code,
Well, you
I'm,
have to be confident in the code you do, but
I'm
in
sure.
presenting that code to them, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but that,
That's what
and
I'm
this is
saying.
why
So
Yeah, but you just touched something which is interesting, which is you're conflating two things, because confidence is just confidence all around.
mm,
Confidence is not just in the space you occupy; it could also be in your work. And you being confident in your work is like, it's a totally different ball game, and it's something that everyone needs to be.
mhm. So what I was talking about is confidence in basically communicating your work, not necessarily. Yeah, you have to be confident in the code that you're writing, because if you're not
Mm,
confident in the code you're writing, then how do you know that the code is going to do what
because
it's supposed to do? But I'm talking about if, for example, you had to go in a scenario where, I don't know, you had to present your stuff. You just literally code is code. You can't you
yeah,
can't.
I don't.
Do you see what
I'm going to, guys.
you
Listen,
can you can
if
you can
I'm
you can
not
fight
I'm
me on
not
that
involved
one.
in this in
You can
this.
fight me on
The
that
tech
one.
bros, the tech bros
They
who
can fight me
will
on
come
this
out with
one.
their crypto wallets and try to fight me. I'm not
Yeah.
involved.
So for me, yeah, it depends on the job.
Yeah,
I personally think. Um, in terms of home, yeah, I think element of confidence is needed there potentially. Depends on what your
yeah,
household is like, I suppose.
yeah,
Sometimes if you have two really strong, confident individuals, it can become a clash.
yeah. But we're
There
not
might be
going into that.
somebody. There might,
We're not going into that.
there might be
It's not.
somebody who isn't,
There's
and
podcasts
somebody who
that
is.
deals with that, guys. If you want to know, I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, in terms of what you're saying, depending on the job you're doing,
Mm,
you're more confident. I don't necessarily think that's what it is. I think there's two things. There are people who are really good at their work,
hmm
but they aren't necessarily good teachers.
Okay.
And a good teacher is someone who's good at presenting
Mm. Mm,
information. Yeah, because a
okay.
lot of teaching isn't just sitting down and saying this how it's done. I'm sometimes a bad teacher in certain things, and people say this to me like, "Oh, Godwin, I don't want to learn from you because you will literally just be like, this is how it's done," and then you show me like advanced stuff.
Mm,
But then a good teacher is good at presenting things and just dissecting it down to like the bare bones that you need
okay.
to build on as a building brick. And
Okay.
so that's where the issue lies in terms of when you're referring to like, people doing working in tech or coding and things like that,
Mm,
because it's not necessarily that they aren't confident. It's
mm.
just more some people just aren't good teachers. Like you have people who are like geniuses.
So
And if you
you're
ask them
saying the
to,
tech guys are not now. You need to elaborate on that
no, a lot of
point.
them, yeah, you have people who are
Mm.
geniuses, and if you ask them, oh, how do you do this? They can't explain it to you.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's where you get the saying, where what I do can't be taught,
Mm.
because it comes from that.
Okay.
But that's that confidence in their work and that confidence in their knowledge that
Okay.
they can do certain things. But if you were to ask them, oh, teach me, they can't really teach you
Mm.
because they can't understand it how you understand it. They can't
Or they
understand it
can't
how,
break it down to
yeah,
layman
to the
terms. So
layman
yeah.
terms for
Yeah.
someone to understand. Like I work in comms, and this is what we do. Like I work with various academics, and we have to go into them and try to be like, well, what you're saying makes sense to you,
Mm.
but if someone staying at home, they're not gonna understand this because the language is too complicated or things are too complex. And these are some of the things that we do. But in terms of their confidence, like they're willing to die on the hill for their work. That's
Mm.
the confidence that they have, like in their work. And yeah, so I have to disagree with you on that.
Yeah.
And I think the next thing we talk about is like, because I think we see this a lot and it's about imposter syndrome.
Mm,
This is something that has been coming up years and
mm,
years, and people, and it's becoming more and more prominent
mm,
as time has gone on, because it's like, how do I explain it? Imposter syndrome is just, you being in a role and you not feeling that confident that you're there because of your abilities,
mm.
essentially. So you feel like an imposter. Um, I have my take on it, but I'll let you go first. Because I think this is all linked to confidence, like feeling confident in yourself, feeling confident in your work, feeling confident in your output, feeling
Mm.
confident that you're being valued and appreciated as well, could also have an impact to your general confidence. So, what do you think?
In terms of, that terminology, I think it's been one that's just been coined recently. In the last, I would say, in the last 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
everybody says, "Oh, imposter syndrome, imposter syndrome."
Yeah.
Look, I've won pretty much every job that I've ever had. I went in not knowing a thing, but you like you said, you go in with the confidence. You go to the University of YouTube. You go to the university, and you sit down and you talk to people.
Yeah.
And so I think too many people will lay, claim to this whole thing about imposter syndrome. There's no such thing as an imposter syndrome. You know what? You are as good as the confidence you have to learn something.
Hmm.
Um,
That's a good
so
one.
for me, I don't think that that is a good term to use, quite personally. I mean,
Yeah.
that people will shoot me down, but I don't think so, because anybody can learn something. If you just have the confidence in yourself that you want to learn, you will.
Yeah. And I think, I was at a talk months back, and they were talking about imposter syndrome, and one of the ladies was like, well, if we keep saying we have imposter syndrome, we're never, how
Exactly.
how do we expect people that we're trying to say should have belief in us to have belief in us if we don't believe in ourselves?
Exactly.
And it's
Exactly.
and I think it's one of those things where we need to, and I personally, I say this to people I speak to, it's like, check yourselves, because it's easy to fall into the trap of like, yeah, imposter syndrome, and it's a new term, it's a coin term, it sounds cool to say, but if you're not checking yourself and making sure that, you know what, yeah, no one feels confident all the time. The boss, the CEO wakes up in
Exactly.
the morning, sometimes he
Exactly. It
doesn't have,
goes, ah!
and this is why we have team meetings. This is why there's boardroom meetings, because they sit down and they try. And as I said at the beginning of this, confidence is information. The more information you have, the more confident you are in
Yeah.
any space. The more information you have, the more information you can obtain.
Yeah.
That's how confident you be. Like, if you don't know anything about anything, you're just gonna be like, I don't know, and you're always gonna feel that way. If you feel like you don't know, if you feel like you're not the best, then you go and learn some more. If you feel like you need more skills, you learn those skills. If you feel like there's holes and weaknesses in your work, in your role, in things you do, then it's for you to go and attain that knowledge, because knowledge is free. This is the first time in human history that you could literally search for things and learn a skill in like days.
Yeah. So do you think the term imposter syndrome is a good or a bad term?
I think it's a bad term. I
Mm?
think it's a bad term because I think it allows people to limit themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you're not an imposter. You're
Exactly.
in your job because you're good at your job. You're
Yeah.
in
Or you
your
can learn your job.
yeah. No,
Anybody can
minus
learn.
even if
Yeah.
it's your job, whatever you're doing, like, you're good. You're there because you're good at it. If you weren't good at it, you wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And if you are genuinely an imposter, you just quit
Exactly.
and go find something else. But a lot of people don't quit because you believe in yourself, and that's why you're good at your job. And there will be the truth about it is, and I think why it's been coined recently, is because times has changed and the landscape of things changes so quickly.
Mm.
So like, things that were cool yesterday are no longer cool today. So like, today you could memorize the whole way the algorithm on YouTube works,
Yeah.
and tomorrow it's irrelevant. Like, I used to work in companies that would do SEO, and you literally learn how the SEO works, do things, and then Google release like a change to the algorithm and how the SEO
Yeah.
works, and then you're just like, huh? And you have to
Yeah.
relearn. And I think that's where the imposter syndrome comes in, where it's like that state where the gap you have
Hmm.
between the knowledge you once had
Yeah.
and the knowledge you need to attain. And I think once you bridge that gap, you wouldn't feel that way anymore, because
Mm.
you've attained the knowledge. And
Yeah.
but it's and I get as well, it's difficult because things changes. It's so, I feel sorry and I say this, I feel sorry for a lot of the young people today, because back in the day, people just needed to learn one skill
Mm.
and you're fine. You could have a career of just one skill.
Yeah.
You could be a painter and that's all you did.
Yeah.
And you could be any just one skill and that's all you did. You didn't need any other skill and that will sustain you for the rest of your life. But now you need like 10, 15, 20, 30 skills. Like
Yeah.
you'll be looking at job interviews and they're longer than people's biographies.
Yeah.
And it's like that's how the world has changed so much, because those are one skill is no longer needed. You now need 5, 10 skills to be agile, to be able to adapt to different situations, to be able to change. And as you said earlier as well, people who worked in coding back in the day, they didn't need to present their coding.
Yeah.
You just worked in your lab, you did your code, you're confident in it, you talk to someone who can explain it better and they could do that. But now you have people who they'll be like, yeah, you should be more confident, you should talk about it.
Yeah.
There's conferences where you have to go explain your work and things like that. And that's why there is that disconnect. And that's why, the term has become more prevalent, because it's like there's so much.
Yeah.
There's so much to learn. And as anyone, you're going to feel overwhelmed.
So, do you think there is a difference between being confident and being arrogant?
There is a fine line, and I think this is obviously when I said my first controversial take, which is Donald Trump. I think a lot of people believe he's just arrogant, and similar with Kanye West as well, where they'll say he's arrogant, because I think it's a fine line. Is a fine line, but
What
oftentimes,
tips it over the edge, do you think?
I don't even think it's you yourself. It's just people's perception of
Okay.
you. Like, and oftentimes people are uncomfortable with what they don't understand. We sometimes see geniuses and we just get overwhelmed, or we see things that we don't understand. We're just like, and you don't like it. And the way, in 2024, if you don't like something, you just shy away from it and you give it a tag and you put it in a corner and then you never have to interact with it. And I think that's just how the way the world is right now. But the truth is, oftentimes, depending on the role you're in as well, as you said, because in certain roles, if you're not that arrogant, if you're not so confident you're arrogant,
yeah.
you will not succeed, you will
Yeah.
not thrive. If you're like we watch sports and let's say football, for example, and they score and they have to celebrate as if they've like done something,
Yeah.
they've built a bridge that connects,
Yeah, yeah.
that connects two countries over
Yeah.
the river and things like that, and they celebrate that much.
Yeah.
But that, and then they have to showcase that confidence and showcase that arrogance. But people could be like, oh, I don't like them, they're arrogant. But it's just how in certain roles you need to be that, and in other roles you don't.
I think they're very close to each other,
Yeah.
because they you have to be confident to be arrogant, but for me it's very like the line is really 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 thin.
Yeah.
And like you said, it is very much how people perceive you. So you might not see yourself as arrogant,
Yeah.
but the term arrogance is just really about what people see.
Yeah, it's a perception of you and
Yeah.
what they see as you, and sometimes you need to check it as well, because I think when you go into certain spaces and it's something which you have to struggle with, because I think whilst you have to check it and make sure you're not being arrogant, you also
But how
don't
do
want
you know that
you
you're not
also
being
don't want
arrogant,
to.
though? How do you know you're not being arrogant?
Because sometimes you are like, if you don't let people speak, if you like the sound of your voice, as people like to say, if you don't give people the avenue to showcase their strengths as well, then you are being arrogant in that sense. Because as much as confident as you are, and we gave the example of Joe earlier, as confident as you are, if you're not allowing people the opportunity to show their confidence, all you're doing is showcasing yourself. And if you're just showcasing yourself, then what is the point? You already know you're amazing. People already know you're amazing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to give people that grace and give people that space to like showcase themselves as well. And through that adds to your confidence. And I think oftentimes people get scared and they shy away from it because they think people are going to do better than them or shine better than them. But no, oftentimes you need to give people that space to be able to be confident and to grow and things like that. And if people change, people change. Like, that's life. But you shouldn't, have that whole, that persona, because that's where you fall into the trap of being an arrogant person.
Interesting.
But yeah, I wanted to talk about something really quickly, because I think whilst we're speaking as well, because you're talking about how do you, how do you portray yourself as being confident in, say, the workplace. And I think one thing that just came back to me is something I read about called the 10 decision rule.
Okay.
So essentially, the 10 decision rule is when you go to the workplace, any place, not just the workplace, any space you want to excel in, your first 10 decisions needs to be right.
Okay.
And because once your first 10 decisions are correct,
Yeah.
people give you so much leeway. Like I've seen it work in so many places because people just like, yeah, he knows what he's doing.
But who determines that they're correct?
You know what they're right because you get the
Yeah.
feedback.
Okay.
You get feedback when they're like, oh my God, what you
Yeah.
did was good.
Yeah.
What you did was
Yeah.
amazing. And it's about getting those first 10 decisions correctly. Because when you start to show, when you show confidence is linked to competence. That's how people
Yeah.
confidence is linked to competence. So if you're competent at what you do, people link that to being confident in you. Because
Yeah.
sometimes confidence is not just how you feel about yourself; it's also how people feel in you.
Yeah.
And if people feel confident in you, like, oh, I can call Jay because I need things. Like for example, you do styling of celebs and stuff, and I'm sure if they didn't feel confident in your ability, they won't be like, oh, we need to call Jay.
True.
Like, well, it's because they feel confident in you.
Yeah.
And so it's just making sure that when you go into the space, you get your first 10 decisions right. You don't have to get all 10 right. You can get 8. But you need to make sure, like, you need to make a conscious decisions to make the right decisions early. Because once you start making those decisions early, it just, as I say, first impressions, and it's in people's mind. Oh my
Yeah.
God, that person is so confident. That person is so competent. And you can make 20 mistakes after.
Yeah.
And people just give you the leeway because they just believe like, they figure it out. But if you start making mistakes early, because I've seen it work in the
Yeah.
workplace where people come in the workplace and as I said, they didn't consult, the school of YouTube, and then they start making mistakes and you're looking at them like, bro, you could learn this.
Yeah.
You could learn this. And sometimes you pull them to the side and give them a pep talk. They don't want to listen
Yeah.
because you can see the decisions that they're making are not correct and they're not aligned. But the thing is, because you're conscious of trying to help, you're different. But other people they don't have that time for them. It's like, bro, you're incompetent, and next thing you know, they're like, yeah, and that's it. And even sometimes it's not even, and I think, yeah, the thing is, it's just difficult as I said, being in the world of work is just a difficult thing because not only do you have to be confident in your work, but you also have to be like a social butterfly as well,
Yeah.
at the same time.
In most jobs you do now, it's just
Yeah.
not like about being there and just sitting down and typing away.
Yeah, and that's part of the 10 decisions. The first drink they invite you to, make sure you go. If you don't go to the next 10, no one will notice. And that is the truth.
Yeah.
Like you go to, oh yeah, we're having a leaving due, come, and you just go there. The next 10 leaving dues you can skip. And they will notice.
Yeah.
Because they'll be like, yeah, he comes, but you've only been there once. And and I think this is the thing about the beauty of what we're doing. It's just trying to give people like these little nuggets and tips that is like, trust me, it helps and it works. These are things that we've done. These are things that I've seen people do and it works.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes, you can be on a drum and complain about how things aren't going your way. But if you're doing the right things and you don't have to do everything right, but if you're doing certain things fall in place. So confidence versus arrogance. I think one thing about confidence and one thing I've known and I've learned is about knowing your worth. And I think when you know your worth, as we're leading to, sometimes people, misconstrue that as you being arrogant.
No, because I think personally you can know your worth but still not be confident. So I could know that I'm an amazing individual.
Yeah.
I'm there to support people, but that doesn't necessarily follow that I'm a confident individual. I can know my worth, but not feel confident to go out to speak to people, to interact with people.
Yeah, but
so for me, I don't think they necessarily are interchangeable. I don't think confidence and knowing your worth is the same thing, to be honest.
No, I'm not talking about confidence. I'm talking about like arrogance.
Oh, okay. So if you're talking about confidence, arrogance, and knowing your worth,
Yeah.
so you're relating knowing your worth to
being arrogance, yeah. Because sometimes people will be construed knowing your worth.
Yeah.
Because if you know your worth, you have to like.
I still don't.
Because organizations, for example, charge you like. Why is Spotify increasing the price from $9.99 to $10.99?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is now. Why are they doing that? Because they know their worth.
Yeah, but maybe they're just greedy.
Well, yeah, but greed is also knowing your worth. Greed is also knowing your worth.
No, I'm when you're talking it from like a personal kind of point of view rather than monetary point of view, which that is, I don't think they're related to each other at all. I think for me personally, they're two separate entities. You can, like I said before, you can know your worth and still not necessarily be arrogant because you know your worth.
But isn't that being like, what is it called? False humility then?
What, explain?
Because you're being humble in a fake way. Because if you know your
No.
worth, for me personally anyway, knowing your worth is one of the things you need to do to showcase your confidence.
No, but you took it to the word to.
Yeah,
so you
I'm
took
gonna link
against-
it to
okay,
both
okay.
because it's like it's one of the things you need to do because as the more confident you become, the more you know your worth, and oftentimes it does lead to also becoming arrogant because sometimes you might overestimate yourself because some people overestimate themselves and their abilities in themselves, and yeah, which is
I don't
linked.
think I agree. I'm sorry, I don't think I agree with that.
Why?
I don't think I agree with that because you can know your worth and still not be arrogant. You can know your worth and be confident. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can necessarily. It doesn't necessarily relate that you can know your worth and be arrogant.
But it comes
because
as a result because if you become, you were asking me earlier about the fine line between confidence and arrogance and how there's a fine line, and I think that's one of the things that tips you over the edge because oftentimes people know their worth and then, as I said, they overestimate their worth. So it's like, say for example, you're like your ability, you say, okay, I'm worth £10 an hour, for example, but then your ability is like £8 an hour. You know what I mean? But that's you've overestimated yourself because you've
But
gone
that
to
doesn't make you arrogant.
yeah, but some people would exude that because they're like, I'm a £10 an hour guy. Or maybe because you're £8 an hour guy, and then follow me, you're an £8 an hour
I'm
guy.
following you in this one. Yeah.
And then but you're being paid £10 an hour. So now you think you're £10 an hour guy. And then you become arrogant in that sense because you're no longer operating on the because that £2 extra does add up over time, and
Of
it
course
does
it does.
it does give you access to more things, maybe a nicer car.
take more ladies on dates. Yeah.
Well, it's not just about ladies and dates, but yeah, if that's what you want to spend your money on, then it's expensive. Each person has their vices, but it's those things where people tend to overestimate themselves because they get to those spaces where they know their worth. But I'm someone who just says, yeah, you have to know your ability and where you stand in life.
Gosh, I definitely agree with you on that. You definitely need to know your ability.
I've had to leave jobs where I'm like, oh yeah, I don't feel like I'm valued here. But people will stay in jobs where they're not valued. And over time, it knocks your confidence. Because if you're in a place where you're not valued, you're underappreciated, over time it will knock your confidence.
So I think that then, if we take it back to where we started from, I think then it links more to knocking your confidence. So remember we started off with saying about confidence knockers. I think knowing your worth is, depending on the way you see it, is more linked to that than it is than anything else.
It's linked to knocking your confidence, but then you have to have the confidence in the first place to be knocked. And it's about knowing your worth means like, okay, this is where I'm at in life, and this is where I want to go, or this is where I need to get to. And that's knowing your worth and knowing how, not just monetary value, but even in interpersonal relationships, things like that, or even in relationships that you have outside of work, or, creating networking, interacting with people, engaging with people. Those things are all linked, and that's just knowing your worth is tied to that piece together.
I'm Jay.
And I'm Godwin.
And this is Changing the Narrative.